everyone. I'm sitting down to a new band again today, and well, Vlad tells me that this one I am going to get to experience a different or new to me type of vocals in this piece of music. So I'm a bit curious to see what's going on with that. It is a German band. I guess I've listened to one or two German bands. Not focused over there very much. Three. Vlad is holding up three fingers, so I guess I've heard a few. This one, the band is Haggard. Haggard. Well, I don't know if that's supposed to be a German name or if that's the English Haggard, as in looking haggard. But anyway, that's the name of the band, and we'll see what the music sounds like. Don't forget that you can always check out my Ko-fi and Patreon pages if you want to support my journey into this music that is new to me. Currently, we are working on getting some live sessions for the patrons going, and so if you're interested in that, you can always check it out. Well, let's see what I have to read and learn about this band and song before I do my first listen. Haggard is a German symphonic metal band founded in 1989. The group combines classical music and early music with death doom metal. What a combination! That's kind of... I'm curious to see what they do with that, if it makes any sense to my ears. They originally played death metal, but changed their musical style after their first demo tape, Introduction, in 1992, becoming a band with symphonic melodies and classical instruments, but folk themes. Just before their album Awaking the Centuries was released, the group had its highest number of musicians at 21. So this is no little three-person rock band. This is a whole ensemble. You could even say a small orchestra. All their songs are written by vocalist and guitarist Assis Nasseri. I really don't know if I pronounced his name properly. My apologies if it's wrong. The special thing about this band is that all instruments are played by real musicians on stage. So we're not dealing with synthesized or pre-sampled sounds. These are the actual instruments being played. Current members. Okay, I see there's a list of the current members here. There are a whole line of them. We have bass, soprano, tenor, guitar, violin, double bass, viola, violin, cello, organ and harpsichord, keyboards, percussion, of course, it's got to have some percussion somewhere in there, oboe, flute, soprano, more percussion, drums, violin. This is definitely, they are blending different genres here. This song, entitled Chapter 2, Upon Fallen Autumn Leaves, is a poetic and mystical piece that explores themes of darkness, fate, and the transcendence of the human spirit. The lyrics evoke a sense of wandering through a mysterious forest and encountering supernatural beings. Well, I guess that's not an entirely new topic in rock music. I've heard several pieces kind of exploring these mystical, mythical ideas. Let's see what they do with this one. Was a classic folk style or early Baroque. We could even say, no, I would put it past the Renaissance, but it has this very traditional Western dance style to it. The ba da ba ba da 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 da, and the instruments that they're using, the flute, and let's listen to this once more here as a sort of intro to the whole thing, because if I were hearing that on its own, I would not say that it has anything to do with rock music. I would not say that it's a modern piece. It sounds very, very traditional and old. It kind of reminds me of, well, there was a composer who, in the early 20th century, there were a lot of composers who were looking back to older forms, trying to kind of revitalize the compositional styles and look for new inspirations, because they felt that this heavy, romanticized, especially the German romantic classical approach, had kind of gone overboard, and things were stagnating, and they felt stuck. And so a lot of classical composers were exploring new avenues, and that's where we got the movement towards neoclassicism. That's where we got the movement towards the impressionist movement and the jazz influences. And there's also things like Respighi, who's an Italian composer, and he went back to ancient forms. And in fact, he wrote an entire suite entitled Ancient Airs and Dances. And he modeled his work off of dance forms and stuff, kind of like this. He gave it a little bit of a romantic twist, but it's fun listening. Little harpsichord sound. The voices in there that were singing kind of in the style of an instrument, they were joining in the whole instrumental ensemble, and very, very classical type voices. This is not what I associate as being rock style music. Somehow it gives me this feeling of being a mix of, I don't know, maybe some operatic chorus mixed with some movie soundtrack. It's kind of an interesting, I can't really place it in a certain pigeonhole, not that it needs to be, but as I'm listening and hearing all this stuff, that I haven't heard this kind of voice in, well, okay. I should qualify that by saying that when Freddie Mercury collaborated with Montserrat Caballé, there was a classical voice, an operatic classical voice, but she wasn't presenting herself as part of a rock band. She was bringing her background and her field of music into it to enrich it, but not as a permanent member. And even when, so often the terms get thrown around, operatic, using that to describe Freddie's voice, or operatic to describe The Wall by Pink Floyd. We're not talking in classical terms here, but they are using the classical sound world, and a lot of classical formalism as well. I'm fascinated by this. I still don't know if I like it or not, really. It's so much playing with familiar musical styles that are familiar to me, and at the same time bringing in these other ideas. I think it's kind of cool. I do. I think in some ways I'm sitting here thinking, well, actually, to put a voice like that in a dramatic style piece, I mean, it works very well. It adds a whole new sonic element and this sort of dark and evil, scary, and at the same time naturalistic sound. There's this rawness to it. I'm trying to think if maybe Mozart would have played around with something like this. I bet he would have, if he had conceived of that being a voice to play with in an opera. I bet he would. And I think later composers too, I'm thinking Wagner. I bet Wagner would have played with a voice like that. I'm thinking certainly the 20th century classical composers wouldn't have minded, and perhaps would have really embraced the exploration of a voice like this in the mix, because it does end up being highly effective. This is throwing me different places so quickly. It throws me back to the Renaissance style dance forms, and then the folk influence, and then this operatic type, bel canto type voice, and at the same time, this verse that just went past, or this portion that just went past, there were parts of it I was thinking, that's an awkward melody. That's a really awkward melody. Why did they do that? Is there a real reason for it, or is it just an awkward melody? It is showing off her vocal range and some vocal gymnastics, but I want to say, and the point is, so I don't know if I love this, but I am incredibly fascinated by it. I'm sorry, I have to stop it again because I'm thinking, where does this sit? What's the purpose of this kind of music? And this is not meant as an insult, okay? I mean it as a compliment. That is, it sounds like it was written for a movie, or a video game, or something which deals with fantastical other worlds and I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I've seen a trailer to it, and somehow it makes me think of that kind of movie. It should be a Game of Thrones something or other, and the same way that it seems that the Game of Thrones plays with these ancient ideas at the same time in a very modern sense, and it just creates an entirely different universe. It seems that's what this music is doing. It creates its own world, and it draws on so many different influences and customs to do that. Why? Because that is how if we have an association with something in the past or in our life, and then we place it in a different context, it builds an idea, a feeling, a space that we can then enter into with our imagination, and we start to feel certain things very specifically. Partly because, at least musically, the music does that by its nature. Partly by way of association. We associate the music with something where it was originally linked. Therefore, in this new context, it kind of brings that strand into this new imaginary world. And so that's kind of what I'm getting from it at this point. Mozart style in the soprano. And then under it, we have this drum that is just building a percussive train track that we're rolling along. It's kind of like the woods, the Moonlight Woods that we're looking through. They're kind of dark and foreboding and shadowy, and there's a wolf off in the corner, and a bear coming out of his den, and it's already putting colors in my mind, setting the scene in a colored way. I'm thinking of cold blue light, a little bit of mist, and kind of blacks and grays and shadows and walking through this space kind of tentatively. Am I safe here? Do I belong here? Do I not? I feel like this has to be sung in German here. Now we're back to sort of street.
Gazing in the moon's silvery light, here where history may fall, enter the realm of darkened might. Courage may now be with us all. In times of freedom, times of fear, Mother Death stands by their side, a unicorn so proud and clear, right when all the worlds collide.
He's talking about unicorn, so... Here comes this part again. Yes, but that was an interesting listening experience. I still am not convinced that I love it, although I don't hate it. It's kind of in this no man's land for me right now. But since it plays on so many classical tropes, and I mean even the lyrics are kind of referring to some ancient ideas. We have well, the unicorn, that's hardly ancient anymore. Every little child has a unicorn sweater or something, right? But they're playing with these moods and references to ancient things. There's, shall we say, fog demons and wanderer and sanctified grounds and the valley of Etheria and enchanted ones, ancient. It even says ancient times, right? So it's pushing us back in that. What it's doing with this is creating a sound world for these lyrics that really paints an image in our mind. It's using the music as an artist's palette through which we can start to build a world, an imaginary world. Because these lyrics aren't, shall we say, very forthcoming in their meaning. And the music is not asking us to interpret them in a concrete way. It's instead asking us to envision a different world, a different place, a different time. One of our own imagining, not a historical one, although it pulls on these. And that's why I say it kind of reminds me of the Game of Thrones movie. At least the trailer that I saw. Now, formally, when I listen to this music, it's quoting styles and things. Not necessarily with any specific purpose other than to quote it. Meaning, okay, we have this dance that it opened with. Cute, fun, lively. It puts us in mind of a village celebration, right? And then we have this that figure which the sopranos were singing quite frequently throughout. I guess that is the one that returns most often, and I was a bit surprised by that. I expected, when I first heard this little dance come back, I thought, okay, that's going to be the unifying theme. We open with a dance, it will come back a few times, we end with a dance. But no, instead, we open with the dance, we eventually have this little soprano figure, ya-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. The dance does come back, but actually it's that soprano figure which recurs more often and begins to function as a sort of constant theme throughout the piece. Shall I say, the bear's voice is sandwiched between it, and even the dance comes up, and it always ends up going back to this voice in the strings, and we end basically with that same da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. It can't quite be called a rondo. A rondo is a specific form, classically, in which we have something, and then we have something else. Then we return to something one, and then we have something new, and then we have something one again, and then we have something even new again. And the same pattern repeats as many times as the composer wishes it to. I can't quite call this a rondo form, but this ya-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, bum is kind of acting like the main something. And then we hear something else's interspersed throughout. Formally, that's what I'm finding here. And there isn't a lot thematically to link the somethings other than this instrumental mix, which really transitions well one from another. I never felt like it was inappropriate to move to the next something, whatever it was. And that's a bit impressive. That's one of the reasons that I say it feels a bit like a movie soundtrack, because it carries us from one to another very effectively. It changes our imaginative view very nicely, smoothly, easily, and we're suddenly put somewhere else in our mind's eye. And that is very nicely done. So all of these different things, what an interesting piece of music. I'm curious whether this band, whether all of its music is like this. It seems they do kind of major on this classical mix, orchestral background setup, but that was a lot of fun. Just the novelty of it for me. Really interesting. And now I want to say, it would be interesting if Beethoven tried out a voice like that. I bet he could have done a fine job of it. Anyway, there we have Haggard. My first exposure, and a very engaging, kind of surprising experience it was. I'll see you soon.